Do you swear that don't give nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Mr. Gabati, with respect to the plans, are these revised plans that were submitted?
These are revised grants based on the last set of comments that we received from the board consultant.
Now, just for the record, there is no revision date, but there is another date on the plan.
There's another date on the lower left-hand corner of the plan, which is 11/17/2014, and last is reference for the plans to see.
You were involved in the preparation of these plans, correct?
Yes, I was.
Yeah, and you already testified as part of this application?
Yes, I testified on the work previously.
Okay, so we don't need to qualify you then.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Gabati, can you please review the modifications?
Certainly, modifications are as follows. On page A1, the front elevation of the building, we've now included a sign. This sign is a 40 square foot sign, 4 by 10, which is the largest sign that we could have in front of the building. And this is lit by gooseneck lamps, and you'll see that at the on the last sheet of the drawing. Aside from that, we did some geometric figures to the facade of the building, and at some point we do colors, to basically accentuate the facade of the building. Again, let me just, I know there's some comments in reference to the survey. The front of the survey is 62.5 feet. I know it's a little fuzzy here. It reads like 52, but it is 62. If you go to the back of the survey, you're gonna see that it's 50, because it has an L-shaped portion on the side, which is 12.5 feet. That makes it 62.5 feet.
Before you leave A1, there's also some decorative landscaping supposing the front.
Yeah, I was gonna explain that on the next sheet, but yes, on the front, what we've done is we separated the vehicles as they park, the front of the vehicles from the building itself, with landscaping, and this is gonna be on planters. If you look at A2, and if you look at the floor plan in the center of the sheet, you're gonna see those planters. Basically what they do is they separate the parking area from the sidewalk or the walkway that's in front of the building. That does two things: basically provides safety for not only the children and occupants, but also it allows to have a defined access or fire access or exit from the building through those areas. And it's very well defined now, and that includes the 8-foot portion, which is in front of the building, which is all paved, to show that that is the walkway through the building, and that is also part of an handicap accessibility van accessible space. Aside from that, what we've done is there's two different types of fences, and they're shown here, also the same drawing. On the left-hand side, that's the side that adjoins the, I think it's a body shop. That is a decorative fence, it is a permanent fence, and that's the one that's shown as 5. 6 is a chain type of fence that will basically go through the front of the building, through the front of the property, separating the parked cars from the sidewalk itself. And those details are shown on that A2.
What type of fencing is it between the body shop and the?
Decorative fencing. It's a permanent fence. You see it on your.
Here.
Yes, this is part of here. That's your type fence. That's the elevation of the fence. It's going to be a permanent fence. It's going to be a metal fence.
Okay. It's in the body shop and
The last drawing shows the latest lighting calculations. Shows all the different types of lights that we're using. It does include the.
questions that we've already had, been phenomenal.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm sorry?
The plans were a nice idea.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I would like to ask at this time our planner if you have any comments for us.
Yes.
This would be entertaining at this point.
Madam Chairman, I just received these plans, and I was trying to review them as we go here. Just a couple things on the lighting plan. There are 2 fixtures detailed, and additional light and a new wall mounted light. You'll see the manufacturer's data there, and there are a number of choices for each light, whether it be, the light source type and finish, but it's not specified which one of these are proposed. For instance, of the gooseneck, it looks like there's 3, 6, 8 choices of that style of light, and then, the same.
It's just, the style that you're looking at is just the arm itself, is not the light. The light is just next to it on the left. If you put your pen down, that's what it is. That's the light.
Okay, now, so there's 3 fixtures listed. Which the fixtures?
It's the smallest one, the 100 watt. In any case, it's the smallest one. We do have plenty of light here. And these calculations were done as per our direction to use the smallest type bulb, smallest intensity bulb that we could use.
Okay, now the other one, which is the wall mounted light, I'm having trouble reading that chart, to be honest with you. I can't really make much out of it. Which one of that are we using?
If you go through the first line, you're gonna see that it's an LED light, first of all, and it's the 40K 400, all the way to the right, and that's basically a 40 watt lamp.
40K?
Right, all the way to the right, which is options. The first line up on top is 40K.
Yeah, like I said, this chart's gonna, just go over here. That's right there. Okay, so your 40K. Again, I just, as a condition, we fix these up. I wanna make sure that you can just look at this and know which fixture it's supposed to be. Okay? And what about the fixture, excuse me, on top of the post?
Again, that's a very small light. Again, we also use 40 watts of that one.
But we don't tell it.
So we use detail to a light.
Well, I mean, it's not a bare bulb, it's got.
No, it's got a global wrap, yeah. I'll get a detail on that, sorry.
What is the mounting height on the wall mount fixture?
The mounting height, if you go back to the elevation, these lights are gonna be mounted, to look at the door, that's a 6-bay door. So the mounting height is about 8 feet.
Okay, the first page of the sheet that we got this evening still shows the other sconces, it doesn't show this wall.
It's a symbol for a light.
So you're saying that the new, I guess we used to call them shoe boxes, it's a little more nicer than that now, is gonna go with the old sconces.
Correct.
Okay, and just for the board's information, the ordinance recommends a maximum average illumination of 1 to 2 foot candles. The proposed, the revised lighting is much closer than the other one was. This average is saying it's 3.5, with a maximum of 7.1. The school per se, if it was a preschool with that kind of curriculum, it's a different facility. So I think that we can stick with the 40 that the applicant spoke of. I believe that's all I have on the plans that I was able to review in the time I had.
Thank you very much for your help, your professional opinion. We have our town engineer also, Mr. Bishop. Do you have any comments for us?
Pretty much nailed all the comments I was gonna have. Just a condition of approval, since we did issue these plans tonight. We would just ask that if we do have any comments, come back, that's a condition of approval. We could handle the initial compliance. And along the lines also, clearly identifying the light fixtures, as he said, and showing them on the plans so that there's no immediate construction.
There's no problem.
Did you take care of the drop-off and the zone for the children? I believe that was one of the comments and one of the issues that you had.
Yes, if you look at the plan, what we did is, there's a section from the building that is paved, it's 8 foot wide, and that section, actually what to do is, one is the access to the building, and secondly, that's your site exit for van accessible parking space. And that is paved, it's shown as paved in brick.
And then, any other comments?
I have some other comments outside of the.
Okay.
We would just recommend as a portion of the resolution of approval that our office receive signed and sealed surveys of the project. And we show survey in front of us, not signed and sealed. And again, we also had received the traffic impact study, we only received that today as well. For us to read over. We have received it, we got it today. I took a brief overview on it. There wasn't anything that had jumped out, there was just a chance to look at it. If there's any comments, we could address them in the resolution. But it seems.
As a condition of approval?
As a condition of approval, there are comments that we can address with the applicant.
Are you gonna present the traffic person today, or no?
No, you testified last time.
Oh, okay, then I have more questions on traffic, if somebody else can answer them. I don't know who's gonna answer those.
More questions.
About the counts, the number of employees anticipated, or assumed, when the counts were taken, where?
I believe that all that was testified to at the last meeting.
Yeah, but unfortunately, we didn't have to look at, so I couldn't, in trying to keep up with what he was saying, it's very difficult to comment on something like a traffic report when someone is just basically reading from it.
Right, I believe that his comments were also that in an application of this size, typically, a traffic counts and traffic studies are not performed because it's so small, and the projected traffic generated from such a site doesn't warrant the traffic study. However, because the board asked us to do so, we did it. And the traffic engineer did testify, he was here, you asked him questions about it. It was not a very long testimony or report.
Although if I remember correctly, he really was not here during the times of peak hours, mornings, when the traffic is very heavy as people are getting to work, buses, school buses all over the town, et cetera, et cetera.
Right, what the traffic engineer will do is they will do a study based on the anticipated peak hours of operation of the site, not of the area. Because if your peak hour, let's say at 9 o'clock, the peak hour on the site is 7 o'clock, well, it doesn't matter because we're not gonna have the impact. So that's why the traffic engineer will focus on the peak hours of operation on the site based on the anticipated or projected traffic generations from that site. So I believe all those questions were testified to and they were answered at that last meeting.
Well, unfortunately, this is what's in the file, and maybe I should just go through them and see if the board has a concern with some of the items. Some of them aren't that big of a deal. For instance, it references 100 students maximum, where the plans say 104. So everything's got to be adjusted up 4%. It doesn't indicate how much staff is being accounted for anywhere in the report, and it doesn't indicate what the peak hour is anywhere in the report.
And that's my question.
So do we know when the peak hour of this facility is versus the peak hour of the streets?
Mr. Lund, can you have your client testify as to where most of the children come from, if they are local or if they're...
Right, I mean,
And maybe that would,
yeah, that was
the
part of
board,
the testimony in the past.
move this along.
We'll definitely revisit that again. In terms of the number of children, I believe that the testimony was that 104 is the maximum occupancy
Correct.
permitted based on the square footage, but it was not the intention to have 104. We just did it based on the worst case scenario. So I'll do it like, and actually, if the board has no further questions of the architect, I know he has to be in Edgewater by 7 o'clock. It had to be by 7 o'clock. If we can excuse him, I don't know if you have any further questions. I hate to release him, but I know he has.
I just have some concerns with, the Department of Children and Families had issued a letter, and they itemize certain things in respect to fire.
Okay?
Did you review that letter?
I have reviewed the letter. Normally that's a letter, like I said, that is a courtesy visit that they do.
Correct.
And those items are usually, well, not usually,
Recommendations.
they're recommendations, and they're actually taken care of through the construction documentation aspect of it.
I'd just like to know in the plan, do we have, I know that one of the concerns that I've had, and I've been bringing this up over and over, is the needs of acres towards the back. You know, the children
Okay.
don't have a way to get out from the back end.
Okay.
Only 2 needs of acres in the front of the property. So here it says on 17, I don't know if you have that.
I
Glenn?
don't have the sorry.
Okay. That you will be providing a fire suppression system. Can you show that in the plan? Do you have that?
We have to, yes.
Can you show it?
Well, that's a mechanical issue that gets incorporated to the construction plans. These
What are
just
you
schematic
proposing?
plans.
Well, no, we have to do it by code, we have to have a fire suppression system for this building.
Can you explain to the board what that is?
Sprinkler system. Because in case there's a fire, there's little things that
So you will have a sprinkler.
impact the how that.
Will you agree to comply with all of those requirements of I believe you have to, but so that the record is clear.
Definitely.
To alleviate the concerns.
I definitely do agree, we go through this, once we get done with these drawings, they go back to Division of Family Services, and they review the drawings, so yes, I have to agree with that, because that's the way to do that.
And the changes, the plans that the plan mentioned, those items of concern, you agree to, if we deem this appropriate, the board chooses to approve it, you agree to provide to the planner for his review?
Of course, of course.
And I don't know if you can answer my other concern, and that would be, where would the infants be located in this facility?
The infants will be located in the front room, which is the one that has direct access to the outside.
I don't have any other questions of the board. And we do have a separate facility for staff in terms of bathrooms.
Should I continue with this?
Yes.
Then there were traffic counts taken at 2 similar facilities to determine how many people were driven, how many children were driven in versus how many walked in. And I guess my question there is, what was the weather during those tests? Because if it's a nice May day, more people may be inclined to walk than if it's in the middle of a rainstorm. People either choose to walk because or they have to walk. You know, and depending on what kind of day it was, those numbers could change.
Well, the problem is you have to do a study based on a typical day. You can't go out, okay, today's a rainy day, I'm gonna do a study today, today's a snowy day, I'm gonna do a study today, today's 90 degrees, I'll do a study today, today's only 70 degrees, I'll do a study today. It's a study of a typical day, which is what's normally required, and that's what was provided.
Well, if you do a series of days and get all the different kinds of days, that would be reasonable. But like I said, if it's in the dead of winter and half of these people have a car but just don't use it on a nice day, you know, you've got to have a different scenario. But again, that's just something. There's also a confusing sentence. There's no page numbers on this. It's underneath it's on the sheet that says table 3. And it says, a full staff is not present until after the morning peak hour street volume. Now, the morning peak hour street volume would seem to be when people are on their way to work. The peak activity at this facility would likely be just before that peak, because people drop their kids and then go to work.
Actually, it's not that confusing, there was testimony. What happens is the peak volume typically is between 7 and 9, it's a 2-hour window, and then within that window, you find the peak hour based on the 4 quarters. The testimony was that even though I don't recall what the number of total employees were, but the testimony was first thing in the morning, you only have a few employees. As the day goes on, and more children come in, you have more employees come in based on the total number of children. And then as the day goes on and the children start to leave, then the number of staff starts to decline. So basically, what they're anticipating is at full capacity, or maximum capacity, that they're gonna have will be after 9 o'clock in the morning. That's what that says.
It just seems counterintuitive that the facility's gonna peak after everybody goes to work.
But it's not counterintuitive that if you have only a small number of children in the morning, you have all your employees there. It's based as a ratio, number of staff to the number of children. So as the number of children go up, the number of staff proportionally has to go up. And the
Okay,
testimony.
I'm not talking about staff traffic. I'm talking that this says that the full staff is not present until after the morning peak hour of the street.
That's the staff traffic.
No, of the street, the existing traffic in the street.
Correct.
So that would seem to be that the traffic in the street are other people going to work, not necessarily these people.
Correct.
So if other people are going to work and that peaks at 8 o'clock, they've got to drop their kids off first. So the kids are going to arrive at the daycare before most people go, the people going to work.
We're talking about staff arriving after the peak hour. But you're talking about two different things. You're talking about children being dropped off and then the parents going to work. And you're talking about the staff getting to work.
I'm not addressing the staff getting to work.
That's what that sentence refers to.
It says the street, peak hour street volume, not facility volume. This is saying the traffic existing on the street, not even related to the daycare.
Right.
Okay, and it's saying that the staff's not gonna run, you're not gonna be staffed up until after that peak of everybody else in town going to work.
Right.
Correct. So if everybody else going to work peaks at 8:45, they start at 9, so it peaks at 8:45, they've gotta drop their, people have to drop kids off before that, before they go to work. So that means people are gonna be, the peak of people arriving is gonna occur just before or at the peak traffic of the town, because that's when people drive.
What you're saying is that there's a correlation between the peak and the facility and the peak on the street. And I'm saying that's not necessarily true, and that's what the testimony is. I mean, we could bring up Mr. Sanchez, he will testify as to the number of proposed employees, and bring testimony to that, and how it's staggered based on the ratio of children within the community.
Are you saying that due to the fact that it will take 3 hours for the complement of students to get to its maximum, quote unquote, that alleviates the concern that the planner is mentioning? Is that what you're talking about?
Right, because
So it'll take 3 hours for 100 kids to show up, and not from 7 to 8:30, when most people go to school.
correct.
Okay, so we have to either accept that premise or not accept it.
They may have some older brothers
Right.
and sisters who go to school, they may drop off those kids to school first or second, depending on the parents' route, if they're walking, if they're driving. Depends on the parents' work schedule. Some may be working earlier, some may be working later, some may be working shifts. So that's what the projections are based on. It doesn't necessarily correlate to the peak hours of the regular traffic that you get.
You know, many of that has been addressed in the past, it's just received.
And again, the traffic study is just a written report of what the traffic engineer testified to. There's nothing new in here that wasn't testified to and subjected to cross-examination at the last meeting.
I mean, basically, we normally would get the report before the expert would testify. Here, we didn't have that situation. We had it reversed. The expert did testify to this, and you have to make a decision whether you accept his premises and also consider the planner's concerns and vote the way you deem it appropriate. You know, the engineer, the traffic engineer, you just have to recall the memory.
Traffic volumes and generations are relatively small for this site. And so we're gonna request just a couple clarification items in order to just verify this approval. But again, I think we've only had maybe half an hour.
So what is your pleasure? To wait, or you have an opportunity to make recommendations? Or you don't see that it's a
I don't
huge
foresee
impact?
a huge impact. I think this will work fine. We'll have to have time to look at it.
Unfortunately, you know, what the attorney was saying is correct, we just heard testimony without anything to look at. Just have to accept the testimony and have to ask any questions.
If the board deems it appropriate to approve this, will you agree to consider the comments that the engineer will have?
I think also, if you want to use that more testimony on arrival times and just try to back up the board as well.
Someone's gonna release the architect.
Good evening.
Before you go, can you just state and spell your name?
You guys kick it down a little, they can hear it, they have trouble hearing. Maybe you can move it down if you want.
Madam Chairman, call on Mr. Sanchez.
Do you swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Essentially, you testified in this application previously, correct?
Yes, I did.
And you testified with respect to the proposed number of children. And the comment I made earlier with respect to the 104 children, that's the maximum permitted based on the square footage, but it wasn't the intention of accommodating the 104 children.
That's correct.
Okay. So, in terms of the traffic report, it doesn't have to be adjusted because we're not going to be over the 100 that we had testified to last time. I think you also testified last time with respect to the number of employees. I think just trying to review that with the board. Number one, how many proposed employees you have, and whether or not they all come in at the same time, or if they're going to be staggered throughout the day.
Okay. All right, well, I just wanted to review what is the actual ratio according to the state. What happened is the state had their ratio, and then according to how every school wants to put their business plan together, they can reach that maximum, they can do less, which would be more appealing to parents to have one teacher and less children. So therefore, that's why we didn't want to go for the maximum. The maximum was more for the actual drawing, so when the state looks at it, they're gonna ask, what are you doing with all of the space? It's based on square footage and 35 square feet boxes, 35 boxes of 1 square foot is 1 child. So the math comes out to the number of 104. Doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to use it. It just means that that's what is allowable, and that's what the architect had put on the plan. For infants, it's 1 teacher for every 4. For 1 to 2 years old, is 1 teacher for every 4 students, for 4 children. 18 months to 24 months is 1 to 6. 2.5 years old to 3 years is 1 for every 10. 3 years, 1 for every 10. 4 years, 1 for every 12. And so with this number, we had decided is to keep the number between 46 and about 56 children, prompting about 8 teachers. Had they all had cars, then they'd all have a spot each. But what we're encouraging is West New York teachers that live in town, so that we can promote that. We're also promoting for the children to be in town, so we can market. There is a huge population of children, and with that number, I believe that we can not only have space for each of them to run around, we're effectively cutting the uses down to half so we can have more space, and the teachers can accommodate the children more effectively. And so that's what we had in mind. If we do that plan, we probably basically would only need about 3 spots for actual staff, and then 2 for, I guess, whatever else is gonna be there, if we encourage this. If everyone needed a space, they would have each one a space, and maybe one person would actually have to park on the street. And so that's what we had proposed, and that's part of the plan, not only for the daycare, but also for business marketing as well. I know that doesn't have to be included here, but I thought I should.
Are you changing the number of, because if the board approves this, it's going to limit the number of students. Are you requesting lower than 100?
I don't think.
I mean, I just wanted to clarify, because that was one of the concerns, what the traffic and so on, so I just wanted to make sure that we are not going beyond what we did. So you are asking for an approval for 104?
Yes.
Okay.
Based on the size of the building, I'm just going for what is allowed. What we actually do is going to be different. For instance, if nobody likes us or nobody wants to bring their kid, there'll be 0 kids there. So all those things have to deal with those factors, which nobody's in control of that.
Now, what were your hours of operation?
That was operational from about 7:30 in the morning to about 7:30 at night, for parents that are struggling, that either have to drop off a child really early or pick it up late. The times are staggered, not, one child, most of them are not gonna be there the whole day, but some might be until 12 and then from 12, to later on. So not everyone shows up at the same time, especially with the younger ones. Some parents have work at night, or they switch their schedules, or they have one parent come in at this time and the other one at the other. So we don't anticipate in the morning having everyone, but throughout the day, since it's not a public school, they don't have a set time where they have to be there. So some people will be there early, some people, when they get ready for work, whether that's 9, 10, 11, or 12.
And based on the ratio that you just gave us, depending on the age groups, then the teachers would come in accordingly.
Right, according to the classes they have, right.
All right, at this time, I'd like to open to the public, if you have any other comments. I know you've expressed some earlier, previous meetings. Anyone that would like to express anything on this application? No? Okay. Close to the public. Any other questions from the members?
You know, the questions that the planner had.
See confusion.
What's that?
I see some confusion.
No, I'm not confused.
Okay.
Very clear. I just want to be sure that whatever concerns you had, you know, was, or whatever questions you had, pending approval, that they were met with regards to, the lights. Yeah.
And the traffic.
Yeah. I mean, we heard from traffic expert, I think he answered all the questions that we had at that point, and this is just a follow-up from that conversation.
Do you think you would like to, put a motion forward?
Motion, move forward.
You making a motion to
To
move, to
move
approve
forward.
with the conditions that,
Yeah, any
that they
conditions
mentioned?
that the conditions are met according to the recommendations of the planner and the engineer.
Any second?
Second.
Clara Frida Herrera,
Abstain.
Commissioner Frias,
Yes.
Jose Alcantara,
Yes.
Lara Hicks. Yes. Ridwan Hamid.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yes, Lord.
Do you need a motion?
I see Larry
the one that we write an email from your office?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
Right, so,
Yeah, I think we don't know the date yet. Did you notice it today? Yeah, that's right, did you notice it today?
yes.
Well, if you notice it today, then we have to, advise it in public. Otherwise, I'm sorry, otherwise you'll have to notice again. So let's make sure that we adjourn it on the record.
Can we, set a new date for January, if it's okay? A new date?
What's wrong with the old date? Oh.
Then, then January tenth, then I will be. Unfortunately, I will not be. For the record.
At the next regular meeting?
Yes.
Well, if anything, we just notice it and then we'll figure out if there's a form to proceed. This is really for notice purposes.
Right, if we don't give him a date today in public and notice, he is gonna have to notice again. So if we do not have a meeting date, then we can't give it.
Right.
Basically, it's just to save a
Will
couple
be
hours.
available whole,
And
which is the whole week of,
I want to withdraw these dates and we can discuss.
You know what? I'll talk to Maria and she'll give us a new date. And we'll do that way. Thank you.
Okay,
Have a great holiday.
take care.
You too. Okay, I would like to move on to the approval of the 2015, no, I'm sorry, I'd like to skip A for the moment, and I'd like to move to item B, which is, the master plan discussion and the possible adoption of it. We had a meeting on November 17th at the middle school at 7.
Can we call the
You
other?
got people that
board
got
members?
I'm sorry, totally forgot about them. They're too quiet.
Sure, I was not involved in the master plan, so if you don't need anything else.
No, okay, so the other application,
Right. Everyone was very safe.
thank you.
Take care.
Hello? Is this the planning board?
no, no.
Okay, thank you.
In the.
How about the
So you can use the blue
Blue
chart
chart, okay.
because, that was the plan that you left.
No one has these, umbrellas on table, right?
No, not yet, not yet. We,
That's not time.
As long as it's not open.
That's right, yeah.
Okay. We're still missing 2 members. Did they go back?
Maria is in the hall.
Oh.
Maria's in
And,
here.
You're in the front,
okay,
guys.
Mr. Happily.
Maria, can you, I think it needs, oh, no, that was
No,
your
it's
seat,
the
that was your
chair.
seat, right? Yeah, yeah.
Right there.
should indicate that Mr. Corso has arrived, and we have,
And also that Elvis has left the building.
Okay. Moving on to the master plan discussion and possible adoption. On November 17th, we had a meeting at the middle school. It was an open, public meeting for the residents of the town of West New York. Unfortunately, not a lot of residents showed up at that meeting, but nonetheless, the members that did expressed very valuable recommendations to us, which we took very serious, and we have taken in the past 3 workshops, meetings that we've had throughout the whole planning process of this document, which I have to say, it's outstanding. And I give a lot of credit to our, Mr. Layton for having put it together. Listened to each and every one of the participants at those workshops. You listened to us, our concerns, and I think that we have a very good document in our hands. One that did not exist for many, many years. And this is more reflective of what West New York actually looks like and moving into the future. You know, we were an industrial type of town. Before that, I think horses and carriages were in town. We still have some of those barns looking on the other end of the town, which is extremely different than, you know, in other parts. But moving forward, I think that we needed something that was more reflective of where we're going. And I want to thank the board members that participated, and I want to thank the public that continue to come and give your opinion on, and your recommendations on this piece. With that said, I don't think that there's much more to say other than any other comments that the board may have.
I have a couple comments, okay? I think it's a fairly decent document, okay? What my major concern is about the development or redevelopment in the town, all right? What's gonna happen with the redevelopment? What's gonna happen to the tenants, the current residents we have in town? They're going to be displaced when this kind of development takes place, or redevelopment, and that's a major concern. All right? What we have to do, and what we should do with the planning, with the master plan, is strive to make real affordable housing that people can afford to live in. And how you do that is not through redevelopment by displacing people, causing gentrification, right? What you do is you enforce the rent control laws. People in town are paying like $1,800 a month, $2,000 a month to live on Palisade Avenue. And that's ridiculous, okay? And this is because the rent control laws are being violated, okay? Now, what I think is that we should really put in the master plan, we want to create affordable housing for these current residents we have without displacing them, all right? And the way to do that, like I said, is not through redevelopment, okay? It's through the rent control laws. That's my comment.
I have a question. Can the master plan cover rent control laws within its jurisdiction?
No. I mean, I believe that the master plan takes into account the needs of of this town, you know, of the population, of appropriate housing, all of the needs that we deem appropriate as a town. And I believe that Mr. Layton's report deals with that, as to how growth should take place. And I don't want to put words into his mouth, and I believe that the board was going to ask him to present an overview of what we have done in the past. But we as a board are not here to determine the rent control issue,
I understand
because
that.
those laws are already
I can
in
appreciate
force.
that, okay? But what I'm saying is, no, it's in the plan, okay? We're planning for, we have to call it redevelopment, okay? In areas where these tenants live, okay? Where are they supposed to go? They're gonna be displaced. They're gonna be just put out in the street, put someplace else, go someplace else.
I'm not understanding what you're saying.
You're, okay, for instance, down by the light rail, I
Okay,
believe that's an area where you have the high density,
no, that's
development.
called transfer oriented development.
Okay, Now, there's apartment buildings down there, so what's gonna happen to these apartments? Are they just gonna tear them down and just put up new construction or?
Which area of the light rail are you talking about? 'Cause
I'm
right
talk-
now, I know there's a parking lot.
Okay, and how about by, let me see, the parking lot be on 51st Street?
Right.
Okay.
There's a
How about on
commercial
50th
building.
Street? There's apartment buildings there, okay? There's apartment buildings on the other side of 51st Street, okay?
I believe that the master plan does not, allows people to develop, but the development has to be pursuant to the town ordinances, which are already, should be enforced by someone else. It's not this board has no authority to deal with that.
That's another time, okay?
And so, the fact that you may be able to build a building doesn't mean that you can,
Why do we need in West New York, with the third most densely populated community in the whole United States, why do we need more further residential development? I don't see that, okay? What we should gear up our master plan towards is like maybe creating a community center, a community/recreation center, okay, state of the art, okay, where people can intermingle, do things like that. But as far as development, we don't need more residents, okay? Because what you're gonna do is overtax the school system, which is already overtaxed, okay? And what you're gonna do is overtax the infrastructure. All right, I just don't see any reason for development or redevelopment, okay? Because what this is gonna do, it's gonna add, and again, you're gonna say this isn't part of the master plan. It's gonna lead to tax abatements, because these developers are not gonna develop or redevelop without getting tax abatements, okay? And then who's gonna bear the burden of that? The taxpayers again.
I believe that we should most likely listen to Mr. Layton as to the plan. The fact that, but although I believe that if you go back and consider the workshops, all of these things were reviewed and considered. If we look at all the points and what the intent of the master plan is to provide what you're asking for: better parks, community centers, education, cultural, all of that
That's all good.
is part of this plan. So that's the most we can do. This is, the plan is not gonna be written in stone. If somebody, a year from now, believes that we did, not we, but the board has done something that should be improved, well, bet on them if they don't make it change. This is not written in stone, and I think that that's what this board has to consider, that's what the community has to consider. I believe that planning, the master plan, based on my understanding of what the chair lady was saying, is to allow us to move on and have a blueprint. It's not going to, it's not a written in stone, it's a blueprint.
So it could be revised like next year, let's say.
That's, of course.
I have a question, it's a question. You have been a part of.
But Mr. Layton may be more appropriate to answer that.
Yeah, you have been you have been a part of putting this together all this month. Now you're
Well,
coming
when you
in.
say putting it together, okay,
Well,
except for
we
the
have
meetings
talked
that we
about
have
this.
here.
We have
I'm
talked
not-
about this multiple times, and now you're saying,
No.
why this, why not that, and I'm not.
We've never
I'm not-
spoken about redevelopment as far as displacement of tenants, we've never spoken about that. Okay, now, the last meeting, okay, November the 17th, I missed that meeting. I would have brought all these things up at that meeting, but I just got out of the hospital, I think you people know, okay? That's why I missed the meeting, all right? But I would have brought it up then. But before that, we had no opportunity to bring up about what we feel about redevelopment or development.
Of course we did.
No, you're saying we did, when?
How many
I mean,
times-
you
Hold on.
speak as though, that even when I read the transcripts,
I think these questions will probably be better answered by Mr. Layton, if you will give
Yes.
us
Let's go.
a summary and your final.
thank you.
Actually, I don't think the word redevelopment, by the way, Madam Chair, thank you for your kind words about the document. I don't think the master plan uses the term redevelopment anywhere in the document. Although it could be inferred that there is going to be redevelopment because we're proposing higher density in some areas, such as the transit-oriented development zone, where there is a large, you have the municipal parking lot there, plus you have a lot of warehouse space there. It's really underutilized space. It's one-story warehouse space.
Because you have apartment buildings.
What?
You do have
There
apartment.
are a few, yes.
Okay.
A few over.
So would they be-
But nothing over 5 stories, I believe.
That's true. But would they be targeted for demolishing them?
Depends on the developer.
Okay. okay, there you go, okay? So it depends on the developer, okay, and that's what I'm trying to prevent, that the tenants will not be displaced within these buildings.
There's a process in here. When you have rent control, you just can't automatically evict tenants. They're more protected than a normal tenant
That was my point
is.
at the beginning of the story.
Yeah, well, let me
Rent
finish,
control,
let me
Dave.
finish.
Mhm.
When you have rent control, every year, they have to be qualified in the rent board. And if you miss a year, you can't even raise them
Qualified
the
for what,
second
Dave?
year.
Qualified for what?
In their rent amount. They have to go back in there, get a green card, get it inspected, put in the last year's payment and how much.
And
they
that's
paid.
not happening.
It sure is.
Dave, let me
Sure
tell you
is.
this, okay? How could we have people paying $1,800 who are
That's
living on
new
50, 60?
construction.
No,
That's new construction.
this is in place. Once a person moves out, okay? I had someone just call me up yesterday who said, well, I'm paying $750. But you have to remember, Mike, I lived here for 16 years, okay? All right, now, she said, but the rest of the tenants, they're paying like $1,800. I said, the reason that's been happening is because rent control is not doing their job, okay? It's as simple as that. If people cannot be paying $1,800, we do not have vacancy
Mike,
decontrol,
Mike.
we do not have vacancy decontrol in the rent control limits.
Right, but Mike, that's not a planning board issue, that's a rent control issue. You notify the tenant,
What I like
tell the
to
tenant
do-
to go to the rent control and you get
With all
resolve
due
that.
respect, I really would like to gear our
Right.
conversation to the topic. And
Yes,
that
I
is, let's
agree.
focus on the topic at hand, and that is the master plan.
I agree too, but Dave just brought this up, so I had to defend it.
Okay. I thank you both for your passion in the topic, but I don't think that we're going to resolve these
Correct.
issues at this point in time, at this point. So, Mr. Lake.
Okay, and I just want to point out also that there is a
Thank you.
town ordinance that requires new housing to provide a certain percentage of affordable housing.
Yes, there is. And what do you consider affordable housing? I mean, new housing, okay? If you're talking about
Okay,
development,
okay.
like take down by the waterfront,
Yeah,
okay? They might consider affordable housing a $350,000 a unit. And that's not affordable housing for normal people.
Well, the state establishes, the Council on Affordable Housing establishes criteria for what is considered affordable. And it depends on how many people in the family, whether it's one person,
I
two persons,
understand
three
this.
persons, four persons, five persons.
I
So
understand
it's
what-
highly variable.
Yeah, I understand. Mr. Lake, I was the president of the West York Tenants Organization, okay? So I understand everything you're talking about, all right? And there's no way to get around it, why people should be paying $1,800, $2,000 rents in a rent-controlled town.
Again,
Unless you're
it's a
talking
rent-
about by the waterfront.
It's a rent control issue, and that's
Okay.
beyond the purview of this board.
Are tax abatements before this board? No.
No, they're not. I think we need to stick to the master plan. Can you give us your overview?
Okay, as the board is aware, we had the public hearing on November 17th. I believe you all received the transcript of the hearing. I had my secretary email it out to everyone. And I did a very brief synopsis of the public comments from that hearing, which you all have a copy of. Except I think everyone had a copy, so you may have a copy.
I have an extra one.
But I don't know if you would agree that this is a brief synopsis of the major points that were brought out at that meeting. I'll go over them real quickly. Several commenters spoke favorably about the process of putting the master plan together and how the document accurately reflects the public input. The document itself was endorsed with the comment that the board should embrace the document in its entirety. Also, an action plan going forward to implement the master plan was suggested. Next, the concept of complete streets was endorsed, and a member of the public volunteered to serve on any committee concerning complete streets. She also noted that there was a grant available for complete streets. I think the deadline is January the 15th. There were two individuals who spoke in favor of high-density zoning for the west side of JFK Boulevard East between 66th Street and 67th Street. One of the individuals was a property owner, and the other was an attorney for an applicant who has an application pending before the zoning board on that property. There were also a number of individuals who spoke against making this area high density. There was a comment that there should be a transitional zone in between the medium density and the high density zones. Something in between those two densities. Also, the amount of high density zoning proposed and the ability of the town to provide the necessary services for the high-density areas proposed between Palisade Avenue and Hudson Avenue and along the western edge of town was questioned. Next, there was a very eloquent gentleman who spoke about there should be an incentive for the owners of 2- and 3-family homes to fix their facades and to make other home improvements. I think that's something beyond the master plan, by the way. That's something that should be brought up with the Board of Commissioners. Also, there was a suggestion that there should be a committee that can sit with applicants, review plans conceptually before they commit themselves to actually submitting the plans. Again, that's something I think maybe the Board of Commissioners should look into. And also, with regard to the action plan going forward to implement the master plan, I think that's something that the board can do. Doesn't necessarily have to be part of the master plan. It can be a memorandum to the Board of Commissioners saying that what you feel are the most important things that should be acted upon. So I don't know if the board encouraged with those comments, but that was my take on the November 17th meeting. And one of the other concerns that was expressed was the high-density zoning along Boulevard East. Now, we had several maps in the master plan. One was the existing zoning, which is this map. Although this is a rendering of the existing zoning, and you'll see there's no public land on this map. And we have this high-density zone along Boulevard East, on the east side of Boulevard East, which is of course all public land. But nowhere on this map was there public land indicated. So to be consistent with the current zoning, the map that we had in the master plan used the same areas and the same zones to show, so you can compare what was being changed. It made it easier to see what was being changed. But there were some comments, public comments at the November 17th meeting that, well, why shouldn't this be high density on this side? It's all high density on the other side. But that's not the case. It was pointed out by several board members that indeed that is public land. So subsequently to the November 17th hearing, I prepared a map, a proposed future land use that does show the public land on the map, so that there's no confusion. That in fact, although the current zone map shows this land over here to the east of JFK Boulevard East, that's high density, it is in fact public land. So all the parcels of public land were put on the map. And I think we should substitute this map for the map that's in the master plan to clarify that issue. And you each have a copy, 11 by 17 copy of that map. Also, I gave out a copy of a pie chart. Mr. Heckerly wanted a copy of a pie chart indicating what the percentages were for each of the uses. And you can see on this that median density is 35%. The proposed land use. High density is 19%. Commercial retail is 12%. Waterfront development is 15%. Public lands are 12%. And 1- and 2-family zoning is 3%. So basically, that's all I have this evening, and the board should consider all the comments at the workshops and at the November 17th public hearing. And if they are happy with the document the way it is, then they should move forward to adopt it. And some comments that Mr. Singer has made about master plan being flexible, it's not cast in concrete. If you look at the municipal land use law, one of the things it says about a master plan is it's a flexible document. It's meant to be a guidance document, but it's not the Bible, it's not cast in stone. It can be changed at any time. I think that's an important consideration. In fact, municipal land use law requires that every so often you re-examine the master plan to make sure that it's current. Law currently requires that you have to re-examine it at least once every 10 years. As you know, we did a re-examination report in 2013. But you can re-examine it whenever you feel it's necessary, whenever you feel that there's some change So although this is a document, it's definitely a good starting point for the town, which really hasn't had a master plan since the sixties or seventies.
Let me ask you a question. In the event, I mean, let's say that we're working in looking at this depending on the vision that we have, whether it's with streets or high density or the medium density. The revision will be pending upon any changes that are out of the ordinary or any concerns that anyone has from the board or what?
Yeah, if the board decides that what we're proposing here really doesn't reflect what you want, you can go back and revise it. And at this point in time, you know, the board has worked very hard on putting this document together with the workshops that we've had and the public hearing. But at this point in time, I think this reflects what the board desires.
Just one comment, okay? On your brief synopsis, okay? You have the document itself was endorsed with a comment that the board should embrace the document in its entirety. That endorsement was only one person who made that comment, right? So let's let the board think that, you know, the whole town is endorsing the master plan. This was one person who made that comment, that he thought it should be endorsed in its entirety.
Yes, that's true, but I mean, there are several other people also that you could infer that they would.
And also, this has nothing to do with yourself or with the board or myself or anybody, right? I mean, the fact is that even with these sessions that we had, I mean, the most people we had was what, maybe 15 people? 30 people, okay?
32, I believe,
Yeah.
But collectively, we had over 105 comments.
on the survey.
Out of, how many people in town?
So
49,000?
that was their opportunity, they didn't show up.
Okay, well, you know, I mean, so maybe that's why I'm speaking on behalf of these people, okay? Because someone has to speak on behalf of them.
Right, I know a point was brought where, when we started looking at the high density versus medium to low, with regards to the west side of the town, we all agreed that from Bergen Line Avenue to Boulevard East, most of the area was originally yellow, we were gonna, you know, move forward and change it to high density. Then someone brought the, comment that the high density buildings shouldn't be facing each other, something of that nature.
Right.
So, I don't know what you guys think about that, but.
Well, if you look into the text more carefully, you'll see that there's also a recommendation that any building over 80 feet tall be at least 100 feet from another building that's 80 feet tall.
100 feet away from?
It has to be 100 feet away.
Okay, so that
So that
gives
means you couldn't have
two buildings in front of each other that are
right
the
across
same
the
height.
street from each other.
Okay,
And there was a good example of that, is take Overlook Terrace, right? You couldn't have, like where the parking lot is, directly across the street from 5701, you couldn't have a major high rise there, because that'd be too close.
Right.
I think I think the concern is the west side of the town, towards Kenneth Boulevard West, that there's a lot of high density. I heard that from the public, I'm hearing it from the board members, they seem to have a concern. So what you're saying is, in the brown section, if you build in, let's say, a 50-story building on Jefferson, would you be able to build another one right across the street? You're saying no. So all that is highlighted for high density.
Well, first of all, they wouldn't be able to accumulate enough land. With a 50-story building, you would need 100,000 square feet. And then you'd only be able, based on the recommendation that we had in the plan, you need 100,000 square feet, and to achieve a 50-story building, you can only build on half of the 100,000 square feet. But none of those blocks were big enough for that. It's only in the TOD area where you can do that.
And I think that's one of the concerns, that the blocks are very narrow, so you will have shadow all the time, you will never have sunlight if that occurred. But according to what the map shows, it looks like it could occur, and I think that's the main concern of the board.
That's why we put in the 100-foot separation.
Okay, so
Is
is
100
that,
feet separation enough?
Pardon? Yeah.
Is
I
100
think
feet
so.
enough, or maybe it should be more? Like, everybody's so concerned about the canyons back, you know, high rises.
Weehawken has, I believe, either a 75 or 80 foot separation
So 100.
by other.
Yeah, 100 feet would be another block to another block, it would be almost impossible. What would you do for that whole block? It would be empty. So, you have to use a rational space.
The only area that you're saying that allows for that type of size building would be the TOD area.
Yes.
So basically, if the high rise wants to get built in all of this place,
The brown area.
there's not a, with the rule that we have, the 100-foot rule, it won't have, that effect won't, it's impossible.
It won't be on each other.
Yeah, those blocks actually aren't big enough to get a large enough lot, where you could build a substantial building.
Huh.
What,
Unless
let's
the
say
variances
10 lots.
are forgiven.
You could.
But you have to eliminate the streets.
What's the maximum of the brown area? I would have to look at the book.
20 stories.
Is that what it is?
It was, let me double check. It was an FAR 15. So that means it would be 15 stores. If you split
What
up the
size
entire
of a lot?
property,
For example, what size of a lot, a regular lot, a 15 story?
40,000 square feet. 200 by 200.
And if it's narrower, I mean, it's smaller, could they build up? No.
No.
It's only 50. Okay.
And can you review what our,
Pardon me, yeah, if they only built on 50% of the lot, it would be 4 to 30 stories.
So that could double up.
Right.
Well, but they can't build the whole, the whole lot, they gotta decide whether they wanna go up or sideways.
and can you revisit the wording that we have about setbacks? Can you just talk about that a little bit?
We kept this fairly general because the real control would be in the zoning ordinance. We just made general recommendations in terms of floor area ratio and minimum lot size. We didn't actually make any recommendations for yard setbacks.
Can we make them now before we move forward? I think that's important because in order for, future zoning regulations to be done properly, we need to come up with something that's within the guidelines and not, Can't we-
So
can
what
we
do we
not?
what do we
Should we
presently
not?
have now?
We have, minimum lot size, minimum lot width, minimum lot depth, and FAR. It would take a while, I think, for everyone to agree on what the setback should be.
Well, like what? Like
No.
this? What do you mean by what?
It's important to,
To get everybody to agree on whether it's 5 feet or 10 feet or 15 feet.
What is it now?
It depends on the zone.
It depends on the zone?
Normally it goes by the zoning, not particularly from the master standpoint. It's when the zoning ordinances are written, that's when you put meat in the bone, so to speak. So that's when, the way you normally do this.
Normally, a master plan will talk about the types of uses, the density, which we don't know what they are.
Could you explain to us some examples of the rear yard setback? 4
Unfortunately, that would be my zoning.
For a normal two-family house, it should be 15 feet.
I think it's 30 feet, somewhere else. Currently. 30 feet for a wheel.
Oh.
15 in front.
Can't we put in some wording that just says that the board thinks that adjustments are important and not putting numbers on them? And like, just saying that these important to follow the rules? Like that? Whatever the rules are.
Well, the rules will be whatever is in the zoning.
So we don't have any sort of, what's not in our.
Yeah. If the town, when the way the zoning or, a master plan is a guidance document. Like I said, it talks about density and types of uses. Now, to implement it, there will have to be a zoning ordinance. And when the zoning ordinance is adopted, it can be started by the town commissioners. They can come up with recommendations. And whatever they adopt, it has to be referred to the planning board for comment. Or the commissioners, alternatively, they could say to the board, why doesn't the planning board come up with some recommendations? And we can initiate it here, then pass it on to the commissioners. It can go either way. But either way, the planning board has input on the actual wording of the zoning ordinance.
The only concern that, I don't know about you guys, but I have a concern with regards to the setback of large buildings to the sidewalk. And, especially with the way that the map, is designed. So it's, right now, you're saying that based on the zone, that each zone has its own setback. So right now, if we have 8 zones, can't we just come up with an agreement that, we can maybe recommend 5 feet more than the current existing amount? Or, within, just.
One of the problems is that I normally have, and he probably comes across this a lot, is that, let's say you're doing a building in the street where all of the buildings are up to whatever the frontage is. Normally, they try to keep it at the same level as the other buildings, so that you don't have a tooth and a toothless, one in and one out, like the Bayonne boxes. Some you park in front, others you don't, you come all the way to the sidewalk. And normally you go by what that area has, so that it's taken into account. But, he's the planner, I guess you can come up with some. But that's one of the problems, is that.
Some people feel, in the urban environment, feel that there should be no setback.
Right.
Like Jersey City doesn't have a setback requirement.
Yeah, but this is under just.
Yeah, no, I was just using that as an example. Some places you get the density bonus.
Well, it's something that the public talks about a lot, but I think it's something we should address. It came to, that's one of the things I talked about at the last meeting, right? I don't think, it just occurred to me that we had never discussed it, so I just wanted to bring it up.
Well, I think this is the first time it's really come up with the whole board is discussing this issue.
Do you have the current setbacks here in that book?
No,
No, so we don't even know what they are now.
no, I didn't bring my zoning ordinance.
Okay, so it wouldn't be fair to talk about this when you don't have the actual numbers, so we don't know what they are either.
As you said, it is up to the commissioners to decide this based on the master.
Right.
If-
Assuming they agree with what we're talking about here in
If
terms
that's
of
always.
uses and lot sizes, the floor area.
So that could be discussed at your level.
You have
The
input.
advantage of that is that we have a commissioner getting here. So I think that could be something that could be discussed if that's the concern of the board.
Right, so we can
Once
make
they
a-
meet and they can discuss the.
Once again, the master plan is an overall guidance document. It doesn't have the effect that a zoning ordinance says. zoning ordinance is the law. This is what we would like, something in this nature. These types of uses, yeah.
So once the master plan is approved, then the zoning board has to adjust everything that they have to adjust according to this.
The commissioners.
Right, so at that point, wouldn't we just, or wouldn't you recommend what the
Sure.
setbacks can be?
Yeah.
So there you go.
You're gonna be,
We're okay.
you're gonna be asked, if the commissioners propose an ordinance, you're gonna be asked for input on it, yeah. By state law, it has to be referred to the planning board.
Any other questions? Okay, I think, again, I thank you, Mr. Layton, for your patience and for answering all the concerns and questions. And I move to approve this plan in its entirety. And as,
Comments?
I'm sorry, no comments from the public until we vote. We have that meeting on November 17th. If I would open it up after.
Did you restrict comments at the end of the last meeting? Did you say comments were closed? All right, I'll take the six word for it.
Yes, I did. There were comments for the other application only, and I closed that public session. Yes, I did.
Madam Chair, you just have the proviso that we insert this map in place of the land use map that's currently in there.
Thank you.
Has the same information on it, except it has the additional public spaces. The proposed land uses for private property is all the same.
Thank you. Again, before I move on, I'd like to say that I thank you for letting us know that this is not set in stone, that it's something that could be revisited as the need arises or the needs of the town change. And, having someone that could communicate this back to the commissioners, some of these concerns, I think, should be expressed at that point in time. I like the fact that one of the public members made a comment that we should have communities perhaps making comments on some of these things so that it becomes a more cohesive planning and not so separated or independent of each other. But with that said, I think that we've worked very hard for a long time, and I feel that we're ready to take a vote. I don't know about you, if I speak for everyone, but I would like to move forward and vote on approval of this master plan as is.
I second.
Clara Brito Herrera,
Yes, on approval.
David Hepperly,
Yes.
Mike Corso,
No.
Commissioner Frias,
Yes.
Maria Hernandez,
Yes.
Jose Alcantara,
Yes.
Rizwan Hamid,
Yes.
Lara Hicks.
Okay. One more item.
Yeah.
We're having, Madam Chair, we're going to hold the date.
Madam Secretary.
Nina Madam.
Madam Secretary, maybe I want to hear.
Wednesday, January 7th. If it's not available, then we'll put another.
Correct, and maybe we can research some dates so that we can, look at, if possible. Because it seems to work for everyone, the way it is this year, I don't understand why that was not considered as first choice. So maybe you can go back and revisit and then send us a new one. But at least we have, is everyone in agreement with January 7th being
Yes, fine.
the next board meeting?
What day is it?
January 7th, Wednesday, and what time? 6:30? We used to have 7, right now it's 6:30, we go back to 6. Is that good for everybody, 6:30?
I think 7 o'clock is good.
Why don't we say 6:30 and then we start at 7:30?
Because it's like 7:30, so.
Well, Clara, I go on Cuban time.
I go on American
You go on
time.
American time.
Okay, so 6:30 then? All right. 6:30, January 7th, and then we'll set our meeting dates then. Motion to close?
Open the public
Oh, I'm
comment.
sorry, oh, sorry. Missed their comments. Okay, we're opening for the, public right now.
Diagram, we have public comments, I want to be heard only.
There's a rental charge.
All right, yeah.
And you can speak as long as you like.
Thank you. Wherever.
There's no time limitation.
Hey, she's on
I heard it.
Unless they get hungry.
67th Street, West New York, New Jersey. I want to thank the chair, the gentle chair lady, for standing up to a degree, when there was a discussion between herself and Commissioner Frias about densities, and they did have a meeting of the minds, and they did have some sort of a communication and some sort of an agreement there. So I applaud actually both women, but especially the chairperson, for standing up for rights with regard to that. And I also want to thank this board for not listening to Mr. Alfuso or his agent or his lawyer or his construction worker or whoever spoke last time about raising the density levels across from the Versailles. I want to commend the board for doing that. I really do. Because 10 years ago, Mayor Series was the mayor, the Class 1 member of the planning board when this wanted to build a 23-story. I believe Mr. Fuso was the owner of it. And the place was packed, and Mayor Series did the right thing, and he squashed that thing. He squashed it, as was his right to be on that board as a Category 1 member. I wish more people would have listened to the Honorable community activist, Mr. Corso, and what he was talking about, because we're talking about people's lives here. You've added a lot of ground west of Bergen Line Avenue, especially, thank you, Linda, between Kennedy Boulevard West and Jackson Street that was not there before. You've also tweaked 56, 7th Street in Hudson and Palisade down to 50th Street a little bit more than it was before. We're talking about people's lives here. We're talking about, as the planner correctly said, we were an industrial area, and what he didn't say, I'll put in. We're a nation of immigrants, we're a society of immigrants, a municipality of immigrants. We had many different poor working class people that settled in the neighborhood here years ago. And now we're trying to revitalize and find a better tax base. We can do that without cannibalizing who we are as a society, without just paying, kowtowing down to the developer. I see that the town attorney, Mr. Scarinci, is at this meeting. I've never seen Mr. Scarinci at a planning board meeting. Maybe he was here when I missed it. And if he did, I apologize because I wasn't at all planning board meetings myself. Mr. Scarinci, I find to be an honorable man, and I enjoyed speaking to this man, but I have to say that he did represent Roseland and Hovnanian back when Mayor Alvio Series was mayor and signed a redevelopment agreement with that area, and he did very well for his company. Now, if you look at this map, we have, what you don't see is not a political subdivision. You have Ward 3 up here, you have Ward, 3 up here, you have Ward 1 over here, and Ward 2 over here. But the problem is, and I'm borrowing from Anthony DeFino Jr., this is not my thoughts, this is his, but I hope you don't kill me because I didn't copyright it, if he didn't copyright it. We don't want to call west of Bergen Line Dean Mon Ward. We don't want to call between Bergen Line and Boulevard East George Capadotli Ward, because he actually has offices at Park Avenue on 60th Street. And we certainly don't want to call the waterfront Hovnanian Roseland Ward. This is West New York. We are West New York here. We're not going to sell our souls or prostitute ourselves to the highest bidder with regard to developing. But we didn't think about this. We have the third most densely populated municipality, not only in the county or the state, but the country. And by increasing the density
What are we doing for the quality of life? I mean, you keep throwing rats in a contained area. There are studies that have been done on this. Eventually, you have like water that flies with regard to rats. You know, people get on each other's nerves. The more people you have in one enclosed area, and that's what we're doing over here. That's what we're doing a little bit more over here. And that's what Mr. Capadocchi wants to do on 66th Street opposite the Versailles, and that's what he tried to do in front of this board a year and a half ago, and we fought this on the 66th Street parking lot on Park Avenue, all right? We can't play with people's lives. We have to think about quality of life for all our rich citizens. Voltaire said that the rich person and the poor person alike can sleep under the same bridge, all right? We have to be mindful that we're making decisions on people's lives, and just because a politician gives, a developer gives a politician whatever the amount is, $100, $1,000, the person that can't give the politician that money, only give a smile and a handshake and the sweat of his brow, equity, we shouldn't say that money talks and everything else walks, all right? We're talking about living, breathing people here, all right? So, I thank you all for volunteering your service here. I thank you all for doing that. And I just, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else?
Linda Keller, 6600 Boulevard East. I want to thank everybody for their input in the master plan. The only concern now, and I'm sorry to reiterate, and I didn't mention it at the commissioners meeting on the 24th, this high density, this increase in high density, I don't think the streets could support all these high density. It's mostly small homes and maybe small apartment buildings. They're narrow streets, one-way streets. I don't think it can support the traffic, and with a high-density building, any developer has to have off-street parking. So I would just be very, very careful. And at the November 17th meeting, I mentioned the increased burden on the schools, which are overcrowded as it is presently. And you know that, and also the police. And another thing is with this master plan, I just hope that the zoning and planning boards and the commissioners are vigilant. The developer wants to come in and build a building, especially if they want variances, they should check their history. Because there's an application for a property across the street from me. It's called Meridian Boulevard, and I investigated the developer. And like I said at the November 17th meeting, at some of his properties, he didn't have enough off-street parking spaces for his development. So he made an arrangement with the town to lease municipal parking spaces. You know, he convinced them there's a dog and pony show. And at the Meridian Park Avenue, that's his current development where it's rented out. There were a lot of building code violations. And they're on their, I believe, the third temporary CO, and with this current CO that's about to expire in January, was issued for 2 months. I think there was approximately 40 violations. So the thing is, any developer wants to come, they should check his history. Very, 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 very important.
I have a question for you, ma'am.
And also the windowless bedrooms. You like to sleep without a window. It's okay, but it's questionable whether it's legal, and it's conflicting things, but.
We thank you very much for your comments.
Yes.
Hopefully, building departments, all other offices that are responsible for these things go after these
Yeah,
items.
the thing is you can't assume.
Hopefully we can trust the people that are working for us in the town. I mean, I want to think that way.
But the thing is, George Capadocchi, he has a new development in Boundbrook, New Jersey. It's 240
We
units.
understand. And
80
we
of
know
them-
you mean very well, and thank you for letting us know what is out there and going on, because we certainly do
You
not
have to check a person's
run
history.
inspections.
Yeah, so,
Right. Thank you.
I'm not finished yet, so the thing is, he has 240 units in Boundbrook. 80 of the apartments, in my calculations, with the floor plans, have a bedroom. Most of them have a bedroom that do not have a window. At the Meridian Park Avenue, there's at least 17 apartments, probably more, that have a bedroom. It's marketed as a bedroom, it's usually the two-bedroom apartments, one of the bedrooms do not have a window. Okay, so the thing is, check the developer. So the Meridian Boulevard application, it's still at the zoning board hearings. A lot of hearings and a lot of time. And he's asking a zillion different over-the-top variances. And the thing is, you know, there has to be a limit. You can have this planning board, you can have these ideas, but you get a developer, or anybody, they can ask for different variances, and basically with the many zoning board meetings I've attended in the past, these applications are approved even with the over-the-top variances. So the thing is, there has to be a limit. You know, the thing is, we have to all be responsible and not deteriorate the quality of life in West New York anymore. I've been a resident since 1978, and it's just too congested. So I just hope, please, any developer that comes before you, please check his background and make sure he's a responsible developer.
Thank you for your recommendation.
Thank
Thank
If
you.
I may, I want to make a comment. You mentioned the fact that the developer had requested the town, for the town to rent parking spaces to them.
Now, West New York, other ones, there was I have it in,
So
writing.
it has
Hackensack-
nothing to do with us.
Nothing to do with you, different
Okay,
towns,
because
Hackensack,
just
Belleville.
so, you know, for the
Broadway,
record, it was here, we happened to be, it was backwards. The actual project on Park Avenue had additional spaces that the town was actually able to provide to the residents.
Well, no, what
So
happened
just
is,
wanted to make that comment.
no, what I want to say on that one, we currently have 73 spaces under the 66 in Park Avenue West.
But
So if
just-
he would have gotten his thing approved, it would have been only 60, so it would have been 10 fewer parking spaces.
But just
That's
as
the
a comment, it
proposal. Oh, I
was,
understand
yeah,
that.
on that occasion, they had additional spaces that the residents actually were able to rent.
Well, yeah, but again, we would have been left with 10 left.
I understand, but
It
it's
would have been,
Yeah.
10
wasn't
fewer.
clear.
Okay.
It would have been 10 fewer, and they uploaded his proposal, and, the thing is, he would have given the parking authority money, for the land, but I think eventually it would have been a buyback or lease back between the town would be paying money to him for those 63 spaces. So in the end, I don't think the parking authority would be getting money, and we'd end up with 10 fewer spaces. But in other towns, to clarify, he's made arrangements. I have it in writing where he leased municipal parking spaces for his residents.
Thank you.
And I could provide it to
And
you.
I
I'll
think
find
the
this.
town should consider hiring you.
Thank you very much. You know what?
As an
I investigate. I don't want that building, I don't even want him to build a shack in West New York. He can keep his
You're
Meridian Park
passionate about
Avenue,
it. Thank
as
you.
long as he corrects his violations. And, you know, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry.
Raphael Sanchez.
Thank you. All right, anything else? Thank you.
I just wanted to say some comments. I could have kept it to myself, but I don't think that the people of Westview should keep keeping their comments to themselves. I think that's part of the reason why it's not part of the culture, and I would like to help to change that. I think the reason why more people don't get involved in this, because what I saw was some very interesting discussion that came out that I think the more it's talked about, the more people contribute, and then it becomes like a bigger picture, a more holistic picture. And my suggestion is that you use this master plan as an advertisement to stimulate the local economy. Because what happened is that the people that have the construction company, the electricians, the plumbers and stuff like that would actually be doing this work, they're very influential as far as their customers and what they tell their customers what to do. You have to get the turn, you gotta do this. A lot of things can happen before they even go to the construction people, the construction office, right? Am I saying that right? Something like that. Anyway, the office.
Building department.
The building department. The building department doesn't have a board, so there's no one that you can have a meeting with them and say, look, this is what I think, you guys should change this or that. Even though I think that Tom and Kim O'Malley are doing a phenomenal job since they came in, I've seen a change in the turnaround and the speed of things. But I think that if that can be used to stimulate that and do classes for contractors and plumbers and people that are licensed in the trade, and do a workshop so that they can know the codes, so they can encourage permit applications. I think if these people encourage their clients to get permit applications, you're gonna see a lot of safer conditions. A lot of things that I see in the construction trade is a lot of shoddy electrical work. And the problem is, electrical is stuff that hides behind walls. If you have plumbing and you do it wrong, you're gonna tell right away. It's gonna leak, it's gonna ruin, something's gonna smell. But you can actually have wiring that's wrong, and you can be there for 5 years and no one knows anything until there's an overload, and then there's a huge problem. The only people that encourage that are the people that are actually doing the work. And if they don't have a reason to promote that, then it won't happen. And you multiply that by how many thousands of homes are here, and apartments and residents, stuff like that, and that just keeps going and going and going. And then as we start to change this master plan, which I agree with, I think it's good, a lot of changes that were made, so I agree with a lot of the comments that folks made here today. But one thing you have to understand is that rents are high because it costs a lot to live here. I just want to address what Mike was saying before. Araceli is here. Araceli Cruz is a member of our church. I encouraged her to move to West New York. I told her, I really believe West New York is up and coming, and so there was a property that was up for sale. Well, I know she doesn't mind me saying these numbers, but if you look at these numbers mathematically, the taxes on this two-family home are about $9,000. If you add the insurance to that, she's close to $1,000 a month. So if she paid this house in cash, the second floor, just to split the cost, would have to start at $500 a month. If she doesn't pay it in cash and gets a mortgage, it's a $300,000 mortgage based on the fair market value, which adds $2,400, which means the minimum for her as a single lady to get this house and afford the American dream, she has to rent the second floor at $1,700 just to cut even, and she still has to pay herself as the homeowner $1,700. So if you look at those numbers, that's just the way it mathematically is, that's the way it works out. The more expensive the building, the more the taxes are, the more the mortgage is, the more all this stuff works out.
Just to address it, if I may, Ralph, okay? I was speaking about the multifamily buildings, okay? I understand the 1, 2, and 3 family owner-occupied buildings are quite different, okay, with their rents. And they're not under rent control, by the way.
Right.
Okay, so
Right.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, so I just wanted to address that because West New York is getting more expensive, so we have to find, the only thing, you can't help people with mortgages, but you could help them with taxes. If they can lower their total monthly payment by even $50 to $100, you stimulate the economy, you make money different ways, it makes it easier for the people, which are in the majority of all of this area. That's the struggle of all of them. People in these buildings don't have that issue, they don't pay taxes, they pay their rent, they go home.
But that's what we have with tax abatements right now, and everybody's complaining over that.
Yeah.
So if you don't have one thing, you have another problem. And to come in and address the renovations on homes, that's usually with the dealer. If you're gonna go buy a car, the dealer gives you the incentive. You're gonna go out and eat in a restaurant, they give you the specials. But for the town to do that, it's almost impossible. Because first of all, giving tax abatements, you're catching a lot of heat, just a word for that. The only way that you could really address it is if you became some type of supplier. If you called up Anderson Windows tomorrow, they'll come in and give you an incentive. They'll pop 30 windows in and give you a time payment scale that you can afford it into your payment budget.
I think I can explain more
You can't go
specifically
back to the
what I'm
town.
saying.
You
I
can't go back to
don't
the
think
town
I'm
to do
referring
that.
to, well, the town is the leader of the people.
But
And
they're giving you the
everything has
tax,
to
they're
do with
giving the
leadership.
tax abatements already.
I
And
understand that, but the tax abatements don't apply to people that don't have those type of buildings. I think what you're saying is that there's no solution for them. So if there's no solution for them, why have the conversation? I don't agree with you on that. I think that the town could do something in this. In that if your taxes are already high, they're $10,000, $12,000, when you fix your house, there's a reassessment, and the reassessment makes it even more expensive, but you don't have more house for your money. Okay, so that can be addressed. That is something that can be physically addressed, because if you add $1,200 to taxes, it's gonna increase $100 a month to the payment. That,
But
the
you're
town has to be responsible
you're
for.
taxed on your value. When you make an improvement, major improvements,
The same, but that's the argument, the same way that we can approve abatements, these are not abatements, this would be just, do these improvements and you stay there. There's a certain amount of time, there's no abatement, nobody's missing out on this money. You feel what I'm saying?
But if, oh, absolutely.
That's it, that's what I wanted to
But
say.
with the abatements, guys, and it's also very deceiving, the abatement starts off the first year. By the 5th year, it's already accelerated, so it goes up in a scale of 20% per year for 5 years. But if you would take a look at the existing property before you did that development, it's tenfold over the tax revenue that's gonna be coming in. That's the challenge that everybody doesn't really look at. They all look at tax abatements, and the town is losing out. But nobody ever takes it where that existing scale is right from the beginning. And I will assure you, 5 years later, the tax rate has increased tenfold over.
I
So
think
if
you're
you
more-
have, listen, if you
if-
came up with a great
exactly,
idea, we'd be
in,
more than happy to implement it. But you have to give us some type of ideas to buy into, because you're giving us great ideas to improve and see great renovation going on in town. We'd love to see that. But why should the town go pay for somebody's home? Because we don't know what the history's gonna be 3 years from now. You know, you give somebody something, and what do they really do with the home?
Well, it's not only
They're
about the home
irresponsible.
here.
They don't keep it
The
up.
whole idea is to contribute to the safety of the community by encouraging the rates of permits that go in, okay? We're not paying for that, the town is not paying for anything. What we're doing, there has to be a balance. If you can provoke people collectively to put in another $5 million into their homes, not one person, but you divide that with every homeowner over the next couple of years, you quantify that with how much is gonna come out of permit fees, it justifies it. And so what you don't make here, you make over there. We're not paying for anything, they're paying to do that job and to do that work. So, I agree, I should come out with more ideas. If I had more time, I'd write you a book and we, have it more eloquent, and we can talk about that later.
Well, thank you for your
Thank you.
comments.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much, expressing your ideas. Anyone else in the public that would like to make a comment?
Yeah, I'm happy to be
Ms. Thornton?
That's Humberto with an H.
Thank you.
HUMBRTO, ORTEDA, 6040 Fort Martins. Wish me luck, please. I made a few notes here, so, I want to address first Mr. Corso's comments, regarding rate control, not working and so forth. Since I happen to be on the board, okay, I was a little bit concerned about these. And you mentioned your $1,500 a month rent.
Actually, I mentioned 1,800.
1,800, fine. If something, number one, if something is at 1,800, it's not subject to rent control, correct? We know that. Second, I have denied many rent increases, okay, where the base rent was at $400, and the landlord could not justify the increase, and the rent stayed much lower. Now, you guys figure out, if you were renting out a property, okay, and you were getting $400 from the, can you really do much with that?
No.
But we do it, we follow. If rent control is not working, we should look at the regulation.
Exactly, no question
Okay.
about it. The
So
ordinance
maybe,
should be re-examined.
Right, it should be re-examined, okay? Because, I mean, from my perspective, we enforce it, we enforce it really hard, okay? And sometimes it's, we look at shows, they can't live with this, but that's the law, and that's what we do, okay? And if it doesn't work, let's revise it.
I think it should be re-examined.
Now, along those lines, okay, one of the objectives of the master plan, okay, right at the beginning, okay, you've got, section C, okay, and it reads, provide a broad range of housing choices, okay? And the first of that vision, okay, the objective is to encourage the construction of affordable housing.
True affordable housing.
Well, we need to define what affordable housing is. That's the definition. That's something that probably comes in the implementation of the housing plan. I happen to favor what he's, developed with, transit-oriented, development. It encourages people to use mass transit, okay? If it's an area that could use the development. You mentioned displacing.
How do you feel about that?
I'm trying to say, you mentioned displacement of people, okay, identification and so forth. if you're building an area that doesn't have anything, that's not this place.
If you what?
If you're building on something, you know, an empty lot or a warehouse or
Of course
or
not.
an industrial
Of
building,
course.
that's not.
But there's buildings there.
Okay, well, that's what we implement the plan, but you guys approved the vision, which is, actually, we had the vision at the meetings that we had, you know, all three that, you know, I happened to attend. The vision was there, the residents expressed the vision, all right, give yourself, were there, and, Joe has captured it. In fact, I could capture it far better than, I was really impressed. And, okay, which brings me to the next question. We complain about the variances. I'm the first one that gets up at the zoning board, and where I fix things in being unreasonable, I speak against it. The next step here, if I understand the process correctly, right, Donald? We're gonna submit this to the commissioners, and then they're going to implement or develop zoning that implements the master plan. At that time, I don't know what the process is gonna be, if there's gonna be a whole set of inputs or anything, but there should be zoning that implements the master plan such that developers don't need to come in and ask for variances. They need to take in where they need to be, you know, like, they need to provide X amount of parking spaces, and RSIS said, this is what you should have. Okay, fine, implement that, and then at the same time, also implement the setbacks, the need for open air, for light and so forth. Right now, you're having developers that come in and they wanna build up to the last square inch of space, okay? And, you know, they're just going to town, okay? Tax abatements. For me, no, hang on a second. Don't throw up your hands, okay? Don't throw up your hands. For me, okay, tax abatements should only be granted where there is no other way that construction will take place. Okay, and I'm gonna take, you know, some of you I spoke up here, you know, the last Albanian building, you know, the building with the $1 million apartments, okay, that's getting a tax abatement. That's ridiculous. Albanian is gonna build there, whether there's a tax abatement or not, okay? It's the last prime piece of real estate on the waterfront in West New York. They're gonna build. They don't need a tax abatement. Ditto for the application currently in front of the zoning board, okay? Meridia, they were at, the owner's rep was asked casually, you know, kind of like an off-the-cuff ironic question, are you guys going to apply for a tax abatement? And he said, we might. Okay, so a building that a lot of residents opposed, okay, and then they're gonna pay for it. That just doesn't make sense. And zoning should be implemented that doesn't need the variances, and tax abatement should only be granted when there's no way that any construction would take place otherwise. Don't just hand out the money. As far as, you know, affordable housing, as far as, you know, what Ralph is saying, no, it's not a question of tax abatement, it's more a question of helping, you know, helping homeowners. That goes towards implementing the vision, you know, have a nice town, look at all the, you know, photographs of things that people like, things that people didn't like, and help the residents. Okay, maybe it's not tax abatement, it's, you know, a little help, that I don't know what to call it, so that then people can, you know, can enhance their homes, get nice streets, get nice houses on 60th Street, Jefferson, whatever. That's, I don't know if I captured your.
No, very well, very good.
Okay, that's it, I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else?
I didn't chance to speak as a member of the public. Donald Skurinsky, Hollenbeck, 1100 SCAR, INCI, Skurinsky, Hollenbeck, 1100 Valley Brook Ave, Lyndhurst, New Jersey. You know, I guess those of us who do this, and I've come to just about every board at this point, mostly to spy on the professional team. And you know, we who do this in many places, in many different places, take for granted sometimes, because we do a lot of it, and we take for granted that when you do a master plan, and something like this for the first time. When you do it in a town that hasn't had a master plan, it's a lot of work. And I've watched you work so hard on this and struggle and put so much of your time and your effort into this. And I really wanted to tell you what a great job you did and what great progress you made. And what great progress all of you made as a community. And whether you think this is, a great thing or not a great thing, or whether you want to find flaws in it, the progress that you made just by doing it, you've now got something that you haven't had, and you've taken the first steps, and you've come together to have a document that you have a beginning, and you'll tinker with it, and you're going to have this to tinker with. And the next time you do it, and the next time you look at it, it's going to be a lot easier to work from this than it was to bake the cake from scratch, which is what you just did. So I really want to thank you, congratulate you. You did a great job. I know you agonized over it, and I think you got great results. So thank you.